Hello and welcome to today's Graduate Mentor workshop. Delighted that so many of you accepted my invitation to join us today. We've got a nice range of students and graduates, very keen to hear from our speaker today. Just make sure you're on mute while our speaker is talking. You will have the opportunity to ask any questions. Just use them in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on those while Neil is talking, and perhaps at the end we can cover some of your questions. But I'm sure Neil is going to cover lots of information for all of you who have expressed an interest getting into the creative industry. So that covers a variety of different job roles. And hopefully he's going to help you, give you some insights into what you put on your CV, how to prepare yourself for interview, among many other things, as we hear from Neil. Now, Neil is one of our mentors, and he's also one of our official partners at Graduate Mentors. So he's been very engaged with a lot of you who may be joining us today, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome him to the platform to talk about how to get your dream job. So, Neil, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Hopefully you can all hear me okay, and you can see the screen. That's quite a bold claim, isn't it? How to get your dream job. I can't guarantee that in the next 20 minutes. But for me, one of the reasons I'm involved with Graduate Mentor is I'm very passionate about this transition from education to vocation and a role in the creative industries, and about bridging that gap. And although I must look incredibly old to most of the people on this call, I was in your shoes once, and I remember that feeling of insecurity and what's going to happen between the education part and what I'm learning now, and am I going to be good enough getting into this sector? So what's going to follow over the next few pages is really a few basic rules based on my own experience and what I see every day at Oakwood. I co-founded and I'm CEO of a brand communications agency primarily based in Bristol. And obviously, I get daily inquiries around job vacancies, advice around portfolios, career questions, etc. So the following pages are primarily to give graduates confidence that they're doing the right things and to stick to a path, but also relevant for first movers. Those people maybe have gone into a first job and are looking to kind of develop their career further. So just quickly before we get into that, and hopefully the slide will have changed. Oakwood was started 27 years ago, which probably makes the agency older than most of the audience here today. But we've been going 27 years. There were 3 people originally. We started with the pure desire to be better than what we were doing at the present in our existing roles, being design led with our thinking. And over those 27 years, the company grew. At one point we were 3 people, we grew to 70 people. We've been top 16 agency in the UK as recognised by Design Week for 2 years. We've been top 6 in brand as recognised by another body, but ultimately all of those rankings, etc., they're nice to have. Awards are nice to have, but ultimately it's about the work and our relationship with the clients that we have. So over those 27 years, we're very lucky to have built a global kind of roster of clients. And as we've developed, we were very much 2 graphic designers and an account man that started the agency. And our skill set has grown over those 27 years. So we can be either advising on packaging, we can be advising on apps or digital communications, pure brand and brand communication, events, kind of internal comms, experiential. So we have a real range of asks from our clients. So no 2 days are the same, and we kind of have broadened our kind of experience over those years. And of course, we ask people that join us to not only have a capability in their core capability, but to be able to think across a number of different channels. And what's been the consistent is not only the driver behind our work, but we like to nurture young talent. And it, as I referenced earlier, we hit a bit of a watershed as Oakwood, because now when we interview potential new recruits and new talent, they're very often younger than the agency. And just as an aside, we also run placement opportunities throughout the summer. I'm very keen on making sure that second year or post grads get an opportunity or a taste of what industry is like for two or three week work placements. But it should also be remembered, although I come from a design background, there is a scope for, as Dan recognised in his intro, there's a scope for wider job roles. You've got account teams that are very kind of around planning and looking after our client partners. You've got digital teams, you've got people dedicated to social media, you've got people offering 3D capability, and you've also got core brand specialists. So it is worth remembering that it's not the graphic design qualification that can get you into this space. It should also be remembered, and this is Graduate Mentor, so it should be most of the people that have joined Oakwood, a good high percentage of them have come with a higher qualification. Rightly or wrongly, we tend to like people that have gone through some level of training or additional learning. That's not to say that we don't entertain people coming straight from school. It's just we don't get many people knocking on our door to do that. But so a high qualification is useful, but it's not the be all and end all for people looking to get work in this space. And of the 86% with higher qualifications, a good 3/4 of those actually have a degree in some form of design or graphic design. And we're talking about landing your dream job. And if you're sitting there either becoming a graduate or just starting out in this sector, what we want to kind of let's just weigh this up, because obviously you are now going to go through this transition of education into a role. So what are the plus points? And if we were all in a room, we'd have a more interactive session on this. But the plus points for me, or the difference, the biggest question is what's going to change from where I am now to actually being in the workplace, earning a living, working in the creative sector. Well, I think the plus points that have always been there from the day I started is there's normally, unless you're with a very specialist agency, there's normally a level of diverse work. You're going to get asked to work on very different projects and have to think differently day to day, or if not hour to hour. You're encouraged to experiment. There's a level of experimentation and thinking outside the box. There's very much a sense of, particularly if you are going into your first role, there's very much this kind of first step. Everything's new. There's going to be a lot of learning. You're going to be pushed. As I said, you're going to get a level of variety. But importantly, there should be a sense of purpose with a lot of the clients that you're working with. And a lot of you should be incentivized by the fact that you can make a difference to not only how a client thinks about their product, offer or solution, but actually how that client is then perceived in a marketplace. And obviously the other plus point, because naturally you've gone through this process to get some kind of qualification, is there's a big learning curve. Whatever you've learned now, you're going to learn again, but almost twice as fast. And on the whole, most of the people, and I would say this, but most of the people in this sector are actually really helpful people. They're creative, they're empathetic, they're driven by excellence and communication. So naturally, they're very open to talk about what they do and share thinking and ideas. I think we also should say there are some negatives sometimes, in the sense of whatever deadlines you thought you had in your education space, you're going to have deadlines that potentially have real pressures on them now, because you're going to have companies demanding delivery by certain times. You're potentially going to be asked to work sometimes longer hours, That's not always the case, and we've now got obviously a whole debate around flexible or hybrid working. And I think you're going to be pushed hard because people, particularly, you need to recognise that you're coming in and you're going to be seen as people providing new thinking, new ideas, and people want to get those ideas from you and very much want you to be contributing to that, to a team to get the best possible result for that particular company and for the client. And there's also, at the moment, just as a caveat, you're going to be adjusting to the new normal. I think agencies are still working out the best way to work as we kind of return from kind of this hiatus where most agencies pretty much work from home for 18 months and clients work from home as well. So the way we do meetings has changed. I mean, we're all kind of doing communications face to face now on screen on a daily basis, and that has its own challenge because we have to communicate and get across our ideas and concept our ideas in a different way. But as I said, the plus points outweigh the negatives dramatically. But you might as well see that, you might as well know the whole picture. So why am I here now to say, well, how to land your dream job? And the reason that I'm very much a supporter of what Dan's doing and Graduate Mentor are doing is I kind of speak from experience, okay? So when I left college, X number of years ago, this was a regular occurrence. You'd write off apply for a job. You'd be lucky if you would hear sometimes that your letter had even been acknowledged, or you'd approach a company, or you go for an interview. And this was a regular occurrence. Thank you for showing us your work. I'm afraid we've filled our vacancies for the present. I know the job market must feel tough, but I think in the creative sector, the challenge is pretty much always the same. Okay. So when I was looking for a job role, I wrote 150 applications. It took me 6 months to land my first job, and I had 50 interviews. And maybe as a motivator, I've kept most of the rejection letters. The positives from that period are that I got to meet some fantastic and well-named designers. I got to walk into up to 40 different receptions. I got to see how different design companies were set up and how the studios were set up. So I got an induction into the world of kind of the core London design scene pretty quickly within 2 or 3 months of leaving college. But obviously there was a challenge there to get that role. So in one sense, the challenge that you all have still, as I said, hasn't changed, because that was over 30 years ago. Why do I feel qualified to sit here now? Well, obviously I got my first job. I moved, I got promoted. I took a second job, got promoted. Then I started a company. My last official interview, where I was being interviewed for a job, was actually in 1988. But I have done countless interviews since. And as I said, I get regular emails asking either for advice on portfolios, CVs, or obviously to see if there is a job vacancy at Oakwood. My inbox never has that number of unread emails, by the way. That would just be wrong for me. But I do have I have experience of countless interviews. The number on the right is probably how many I really remember over those last 30 years. And what I wanted to try and bring across today is why those 5 interviews stood out for me, and the people I did remember, 4 of them we employed. The 5th person decided to work elsewhere. So ultimately, there's going to be nothing new here from what you've probably already decided to do or what you've been advised. You know, you reaching out into the creative sector will have to start with some kind of CV and a portfolio, evidence of work. I think the biggest flaw that I see is you need to put yourself into the shoes of art directors, agency owners, etc. When they're looking for a role, they've got a gap to fill, or looking to fill a role, they've got this gap to fill, and they're time poor. So the CV needs to be as succinct as possible. And ideally, we want it to, if we can somehow get a summary of who you are and what you want at the top of the CV, that would be really helpful. It would just to understand, you know, that you've recently graduated, you really like this certain discipline within the design sector, and you're looking for a role because of this reason or that reason. That would be really helpful as a summary at the top of the CV. Personally, if you have a higher education qualification, I don't really want to see any of the other qualifications. I don't need to know how many GCSEs, etc. you've got. I mean, you can have a brief history of your schooling, but I don't need to know that detail. The inference that you have the higher education qualification will do for me. But actually, what I really want to get across is some kind of succinct, ideally kept to one page, where I can just kind of understand who you are and what is driving you to ask for this role. On the right-hand side of this graphic is obviously the portfolio. Again, you have two challenges here, because in this world you're having to send folio and CVs off electronically, and if you get a chance you may meet someone face to face to present that. But avoid pages and pages. I don't want to see one project that's then spread across 10 pages. It's very unlikely you would have done a project of that depth or scale that warrants that piece. Again, try and set up the project with a brief overview of what you are looking to achieve, and then dazzle me with the work in one page, if you can do it. Okay. The important thing on both sides is you're coming into the creative sector. Make them both look nice. Make sure they're spelt correctly. Make sure they're laid out with care and consideration. And if you want to put a bit of your own character into it, then that's fine. So overall, what I would stress is quality over quantity is what we're looking for with the covering letter and the CV, and the portfolio. But ultimately, it's the bit in the middle. It's the you I really want. Because when you're sent 30 CVs and you're going to go through them, I'm looking for something that's going to stand out, that you've got a passion for something, that you've got a willingness to learn, that there's just something in there. And don't feel you have to make that up. It will become evident. But we're going to be making decisions to take the conversation to the next stage based on a few sound bites. So I think the way either the covering letter's designed or the way the CV or the portfolio is presented is really key. But I'm also really keen to understand your willingness to learn, because the most important judgment is you. You may have a particular passion. You may have done something outside of the creative sector that's unusual. I'd also want to know your ambition. If you're going to come into the creative sector without any ambition, well, that just seems a wasted opportunity. So not every employer will be looking for that, but I'd like to understand where you want to go, what is driving you at this moment in time. But ultimately, away from the work, so you may have 5 or 6 pages of core work in that portfolio. I want you to show me that you are aware, that you walk around living and breathing good branding, good design. It doesn't have to be to my taste. It just needs to be that you have this passion for what you do. So some of these are rather dated now, but if you are coming into this as a vocation, then you should be, there should be evidence in your portfolio of the fact that you love what you do. I don't know if anyone knows of these are kind of just 3 examples. The 12-inch single sleeve on the left was designed by Peter Saville for New Order and was revolutionary, award-winning at the time. Landor did the FedEx identity, where the arrow is embedded between the E and the X. But actually, a lot of people didn't spot it, and FedEx didn't actually spot it when Landor presented it to them originally. And then other things like these are film credits on the right-hand side for The Favourite, a film that came out a couple of years ago, and I think won numerous awards for Olivia Colman. But actually, whether you like the film or not, the typography during the film was just weird, and it was very one-minded about what it wanted to do. You know, if you were at college now, I'm sure a tutor, or you'd have a conversation about, is that letter spacing going to work? But the point is, what I'm trying to get across is I want you to bring those kind of opinions into a conversation, ideally to support the projects you're also showing. But, you know, if you've got to an idea, what drove you to that idea? Is it because, you know, you've been influenced by a certain film, or you've seen this in the past? It's really important that I kind of understand that you have a drive and a passion that goes outside just the job you're being asked to do. So unfortunately, as a designer, and if you've been trained in that role, then you are going to look at the album as much as you will listen to the music. You know, you are going to look at the credits as much as you watch the film. And we want some evidence of that living and breathing kind of passion for design as you move forward. I think it's also important to acknowledge that, you know, we don't expect graduates in particular to come to work and have all the skills. If you have that will and the passion that I've talked about in the previous page, we will dedicate time to teach you the skills. What's more important is that you have this willingness to investigate and learn, and also take on new challenges. And probably even more so is to be able to talk through your thinking and articulate your ideas. As you walk into a studio, all of a sudden the whole dynamic changes from when you were at college, which was very much a personal journey, to you are now part of a team to produce work. And whether that's the most comfortable thing for you, and we don't expect you to necessarily be outgoing and put on a complete show, but for you to be able to talk eloquently about your work is really key, because actually we want you to come in and we want you to elevate our thinking as well. And you should see yourself as an asset, as new blood into the sector, because you're going to be influenced in very different ways to the other employees in my team. Now, it just so happens this is not essential. If you can scribble or talk through an idea, or even rip up magazines or create tears to get across your idea quickly, then that's even better. Because if we can start progressing ideas faster than having to sit down on a computer and generate them to a high finish, and start talking about the idea early, and this is not just for the creative team, this is for people going into the client side, right across the board. If we can articulate thinking in a very visual way, that really helps. Now, probably here, the total sum of time to do those 3 drawings is probably about 3.5 minutes, which is not a great output over 30 years of being in the industry, is it? But the point is, we were able to sell ideas either within the team or to a client very, very quickly. And I think you don't necessarily need to have a competency to draw. These are all very basic scams. But if you can find a way to use reference points to talk about your skills, or to talk about your ideas, that's good. And I bring that, this is important, because the one bottom right, the line drawing of the 4 cars, that was then shown to a client. And then 3 months later, that was the end result, which then went into their range brochures, it went into dealership posters. So that whole piece, that whole development and that piece of work that ended up being shot in the Sahara Desert in Morocco, emanated from a scam. So I would just stress, nothing's going to fall into your lap, but it's good to understand earlier, and that's good to understand early on. And that's why Graduate Mentor is such a valuable resource, because I think it gives you, you need to maintain the confidence for you to keep going, navigate some of the pitfalls, and maximize the opportunities when they come your way. And one of the good things, if you start to think, oh, this is really tough, actually, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I'm going the extra mile to get a job. Well, actually, guess what? In order for Oakwood to win work and new clients, we have to do pretty much the same thing with those clients each time. So the process you're going through would be replicated in the real world. Just very quickly, last couple of slides, I would just say that it's, for me, this is not a job. So we kind of said at the front, you know, land your dream job. This is a vocation. I think sometimes we have to step back from this sector and just go, we get paid to create. We get paid to do something we love. That's an amazing thing. Not everyone, some people go to work and don't like their jobs. And on the whole, we can get paid quite well, yeah? It's really keen when we go back we go back to the CV piece, or when you're interviewed. I really want to see a sense of a journey, the kind of, this is where I'd like to go. This is the kind of area I'd like to specialize in, because I really like that particular style, or I want to really focus on that particular channel of comms or whatever. And again, it may be that you don't take that all the way through, but it's kind of evidence of this passion and drive moving forward. So this is not about you being pushed into the sector. This is about the vision pulling you towards it. And it is hard to get in, but once you get in, you start to make contacts and you open new opportunities. The hardest job you're going to get is your first one. We need to remember that your age group and the generation after you are going to be the biggest part of the workforce within five to 10 years. Okay. And I think this kind of summarizes, if you're having a down day, trying to get your portfolio together, trying to get your CV together, the reason you want to get into this sector is pretty much here. You love doing what you do. The world certainly always needs better design, whether it's 2D, 3D, signage, medical instrumentation or whatever. You're good at it because you've taken the commitment to put yourself through higher education, and you'll get paid for it. But all of that is a mix of then passion. There's a mission from the company, your own personal mission, and the company you're working for. There's a sense of vocation, and it is a profession. So I would argue that through your own definition, you can create your own purpose here. I love nothing more than walking out of a meeting room having got a global brand to change their mind about how they're going to go to market, or how they present a new product to a new audience. Ultimately, there's a kind of 2 or 3 hour discussion around what you're looking for, but hopefully what I've done is just injected a bit of, you're doing a lot of the things I've mentioned, and I just really want people to have confidence in what they're doing. Just 5 points to remember every time you're applying for a new role or looking to move. A quality presentation, quality over quantity. Make sure it's easy to understand when you're not presenting it, because you're going to have to send it over as a PDF. But also when you are presenting it, make sure that it's easy to understand, it's engaging, and then you can move on. I'm afraid that people normally in employment roles probably have a short attention span and are always looking for the next idea. Your CV should be succinct. I don't necessarily need the whole depth. I want to understand a bit about you personally, but we don't necessarily need. What I really want to get to is who you are, what you're looking for, and the role that's going to really spark your passion in my company. Have a plan. The thing I always remember, that it was a lot easier staying engaged with the whole process when I was looking for work, when I always had my next interview to go for, or I always had the next conversation. Don't let time, kind of large periods of time, drop between each interaction. But also write down where you want to be, where you want to go, because it's not just one thing about getting a job, but what's the next stage? Because if you can demonstrate, I kind of, by the age of 21, I knew that I wanted to get a job in London at the time. I then knew I wanted to kind of do well in that role, but ultimately in the back of my head, I knew I wanted to start a company. So just be flexible and take on and just absorb the feedback you get from each interview, because actually the one benefit I would say about the number of interviews I had is I got a lot of great feedback, which has helped kind of frame how I operate and work now. I think the biggest thing for me, though, is demonstrate your thinking. You have a core portfolio that you've obviously been working on over a couple of years to kind of hone and bring down there, but bring some extra areas of personality, bring sketches, bring tears, bring art, you know, even if you just say, look, I just wanted to share this, I saw this yesterday, I really liked it. Those kind of levels of extra demonstration of caring about the sector and you looking out for ideas continually are really key. They're the bits that make you stand out over a standard CV and portfolio, because you're demonstrating the bit in you that makes the spark and makes you want to find this role in the sector. And the last one, and it's really hard, is just don't take any rejection personally. It's not aimed at you. It's going to just be either, it's going to be a timing thing more than anything else, or just when you're stacked, you know, there could just be someone else in that role who happens to demonstrate an exact capability that the employee is looking for. You just need to find that opportunity, and it will happen. So that bit about want it more is just keep going, keep talking to people, and keep being inquisitive, and keep driving to find that role. So I hope that's a bit of a pep talk, really, just to kind of focus the kind of thinking about the core tools that you're going to be using. But ultimately, you know, you've got the tools, but ultimately the best tool is going to be yourself and how you present your thinking. Over to you, Dan.
Neil, thank you very much. It certainly was a pep talk. I feel very motivated by what you were sharing there, and I hope everyone was paying attention and took some useful advice from your presentation. I'm quite impressed you kept all your rejection letters, Neil.
Yeah, well, actually, I like letterheads, so it was interesting at the time. People are going to say, "What's a letterhead?" We don't often print paper now, but I think once it got past X number of rejections, I thought I should record these. They kind of spurred me on.
Yeah, well, that's really encouraging, because it can be so demoralizing getting letter or email after email, hopefully with some feedback from those companies that do bother to let you know. But it's part of the learning curve, and I got that from your talk at the end there, that it's part of the journey. Try not to take it personally and feed off the momentum, I suppose, you were trying to get across. And that is so important, because it's very easy to get into a negative mindset with all of these rejections. But the key is to keep going and use your advice. You know, make sure you've got a passion for the subject beyond just studying a creative subject at university. I keep hearing this from employers. They want to see what are you doing outside of your studies that shows me you really want to do this. So, you know, it could manifest itself in taking e-learning courses at the weekend, or, you know, reading certain publications, or whatever it is. Get it into your CV or covering letter, and that really strengthens your application. It shows you're different than other people. You do actually want to get into this. It's a genuine passion of yours. So I think that's wonderful advice. So thank you, Neil, for taking some time out of your busy day to present to all of our students and graduates in the room. It has been recorded, so if you do want to go back and listen to this presentation, I'll be uploading this to our YouTube channel. So I hope it's given you some inspiration, some useful insights. And if any of you are a future Peter Saville, I really hope so. I love what he does. And hopefully there's going to be an opportunity for you to really shine and make a career out of your talents. Neil is one of our active mentors, on-graduate mentors. So if you would like to book a one-to-one session over Teams, I'm sure he'd be happy to oblige. Thank you. So do go onto the platform, search for Neil, and he'll be there to book one-to-one sessions. Now, if you do have any questions, I'm just going to turn to the chat right now, because I noticed we have a question here from McLean. Thank you very, very much for your question. So, Neil, what would your advice be to an American recent graduate interested in the marketing space.
And are you looking for a role? I presume looking for a role in the UK. I think, personally, I think you have a slight advantage because a lot of my clients are American based. So I think maybe do some research when you're looking for roles and see if you're going to marketing or design companies, maybe just see where their spheres of operations are, because it's really important now. You know, we were very much a localized industry 20 or 30 years ago. It's really important we get perspectives that are global. So I would actually just say, and you know, there is something obviously about you that's given you the fact that you are now in the UK and you have that US heritage. I mean, that's a great thing to lead on your CV.
Yeah, great differentiator, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, another question from Lee's. Thank you very much. What about a recent PhD graduate with some experience in industry? How do I tell my story on my CV?
Without knowing the role you're going for, most of my clients, because I work in the B2B and industrial space, are PhDs or doctors or highly intelligent. So again, the PhD piece is a differentiator for me. I would imagine, what I would imagine is you have an approach to thinking that could be quite interesting. I'd also suggest, and I don't know if this is your bag or not, that you may want to look into advertising, because there's a kind of a way of thinking there which I think would actually suit kind of your learning capability. But if you were going to aim for a certain area, I think you obviously, you know, you've got that qualification for thinking deeply, etc. It could be that you walk into a branding or a brand positioning piece, which is more around the words than it is the visual output. But it's around the psychology behind the idea, and I think that's where you could add value. So you might just want to cherry pick some of the companies that you go looking for. Sorry, without the background, you can send me your CV if you want. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the person who wrote that question, but send me your CV.
Lovely. Thank you for the offer. And yeah, so certainly someone who's stayed in higher education and really got stuck into a particular subject can bring a lot to the creative industry. So I'm sure there's a way to apply your skill set there. Okay, another question from Aisha. Just scroll back up there. For online courses like digital marketing courses that have certifications, where on your CV would you list it? Experience or skills?
I think probably skills. I mean, what I'm getting more and more of is people mark themselves with, you know, 5 out of 5 for Photoshop or 4.5 out of 5 for Illustrator. I mean, we expect a basic level of, yeah, I think it's in the skills.
Yeah, it's a good question. There are some things you do wonder, you know, does that go in qualifications, experience or skills? You don't want to duplicate what you're putting in there, and you do have to be conscious of the space you're using. So
yeah, and I suppose to add to that, Dan, look, I'm not going to mark you either way whether you put it in either. I think the main thing is don't duplicate it. It's just
or bury it. So it's also important to have something like that on the front page as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Another question from Mia. So if I have a modern languages degree, would it be much harder for me to get into the creative sector without a background in design, for example?
Depends whether you want to get into the creative, when I call creative, whether you want to get into the studio or whether you want to get client side. I would say if you've got modern languages client side, bingo. Because again, we're dealing with a lot of my clients' main markets are now in Asia. I'm actively looking for people that have 2 or 3 languages. Yeah, if I've got people in my office that can speak Spanish, for instance, and Korean. So yes, is the short answer. I'm, without seeing the portfolio, don't know about the studio, and never say never. But yeah, I would say it's another asset for you to push in your CV.
Definitely. You know, you think of an engineering firm, for instance, do I need an engineering degree? Well, an engineering firm will have a marketing team, an accounts team, HR team, operations, and they require different degrees and skill sets. So, you know, you need to go beyond thinking that an engineering firm will just look for engineering graduates. So likewise, in the creative sector, there are other opportunities that require, you know, different degrees. So
and,
hopefully,
and all my clients, sorry, Dan, all my client service team think they're creative. So they think they're in the creative space. We just don't tell them they're not.
Yeah, makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Okay, hopefully that's answered your question there, Mia. Another question here from Mawera. How does one articulate political experience in campaigns and communications as a transferable skill into a marketing or advertising exec role? I have an international relations with politics degree. So how do they articulate the political experience to transfer it into a marketing role?
I think you need to probably analyze what parts of that learning could be applied to the marketing or the creative space. So I'm second guessing because I've not done that. I've not done the learning you've done, but I would say you have an understanding of social and economic politics and frameworks. You have an understanding maybe of how to present that thinking in a simplified way so other people understand it. You probably also have an understanding of how to present that in a way that's going to be empathetic, I would hope, if you're into politics. So it seems to me that you're an ideal candidate for client services role again. And I would say, again, maybe some of the bigger companies want that kind of global view and that deeper thinking. This is the bit I'm talking about. It's like, yes, you've got a willingness to get into the sector, but if you can, everyone who's come in with a question so far, they've all got an added string to their bow.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly with something like international relationships and politics, I'm sure you will study how politicians put spin on different things. You know, a lot of that is about public relations and communications. So it's very interesting and would, you know, easily transfer into a creative role. You know, advertising, for instance, where you need to be persuasive. You know, I definitely got a good skill set.
And has anyone? I don't know if anyone's listening here. Has anyone done psychology? Because actually, if I had a chance to do my education again, I'd have done psychology with design. But
how minds work, and what buttons to press. Exactly. Got another question here, if that's all right, Neil, just for a few more minutes. From Lee's, I'm actually focusing on strategy or branding. I'm going to send you my CV, so keep an eye out for Lee's CV. Lize is her name.
Okay.
Another question here from Keishav. So thank you for your time and appreciate your presence. I have two questions. Does it matter for a recruiter to check the background, especially when it's in marketing, for both offline and digital marketing? So background as in someone's different culture or from a different country. I mean, we talked about one of our graduates there who's from America, so similar thing there. But does it matter for a recruiter to check the background of an individual in that way?
We're in a slightly difficult space now because there's certain questions I'm not allowed to ask. Otherwise, you know. So I would say it's good to have a background to a level, mainly because if someone is working I don't know, someone either wants to be based in a different country or they have a commitment in a different country, that would be good to understand. But obviously with flexible working, etc., there are ways around that. I see the difference, or I see the additional background as a potential differentiator. So I think it's good to know, but it certainly doesn't influence our decision.
Yeah, use it to your advantage.
Yeah. I hope that helps, whoever asked that.
Yeah. Especially, you know, we're working in a global industry, so it's definitely helpful there. Being able to speak another language or have an understanding of a culture and behaviour and psychology, things like that are really useful for an organisation who want to work in that country. So definitely an advantage. This individual is also interested in offline marketing, but he realises the future is in digital marketing Which one should he go for in terms of his first job?
I think, I'm sorry, this is going to be a compromise. I'd apply for both opportunities. If you get a job, I mean, and your first job is key because it gets you a rung on the ladder. So if you end up going for offline, and then you have a chance to then consider how you move forward later. So you have more time to then make a decision. So I would run both in parallel.
Definitely keep your options open, because you might not like, one job over the other, but yeah.
I get that digital, everything, I get that everything is becoming digital, but there is still a role, so I know I didn't go into that. I wasn't going to sell Oakwood to everyone today, but we do a lot of experiential. We do a lot of direct mail. And in fact, we're doing more and more how to manage kind of round table meetings. So for all the digital stuff, the human contact and the human exchange piece is still really big. So, I wouldn't dismiss either of those. Personally, I'd run them both in parallel if you could. Not very helpful answer, but
no, it's useful because you're still learning about these different job roles and careers. Yeah. And if you haven't had an internship or a placement, which lots of graduates haven't had that opportunity because of lockdown, you're still very much in experimentation or discovery mode. So don't close doors before you get going. I think that's good advice. There's a question here I can probably answer because it's not particularly related to the creative industry, but Balogun has asked that he got some feedback from an interview, and it was that his communication delivery was flat. So it's kind of monotone, his delivery. So when introducing your pitch, do you need to mix tones or make it more succinct? I mean, I would say you need to be showing your passion. So that will mean, the way you talk, it needs to come through, or you're emphasizing certain words, or the way you deliver and answer questions is subconsciously being remembered by your interviewer. So, if you are coming across very monotone, it doesn't show you're interested or keen. I think that's what they were perhaps trying to say. So definitely have a mock interview with a friend or a parent or someone who's doing the role, and actually practice being enthusiastic with your delivery, because that could inadvertently give the wrong impression. So sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Very, very true. So I think that's really good feedback you've had there, and something you can definitely easily work on and improve. We've got a graduate seeking a tech role. Is it advisable to list some of the projects I've done on the CV? Neil, I think you'd agree, you'd have to list your project. I guess where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I think it's pick out a couple of highlights, not too long.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I had a bit of a connection glitch.
Did they? Yes. Yeah, you said be succinct. Be choosy about the skills you put on there. We've got one other question here from Victoria. Since I'll be graduating in a few months with a lack of experience in digital marketing, I studied politics and sociology. Would you advise spending the next few months after graduation building a portfolio while having a regular non-related job? It's a good question.
I wouldn't hold off going for interviews to do that. I think if that's something you want to do, that would demonstrate that you are self-driven and you want to learn more. So I think I wouldn't kind of set it as a set time scale. I would start to build it in, and I would go to market, because that's what you're doing. You're marketing yourself to new employees. I go to market as you are and saying, I'm looking to build my digital skills, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And you can show some evidence of that. And then you can get some feedback early on as to, yes, you do need to actually demonstrate that more. Or I think you're going to get different responses from different companies depending on their needs. So I wouldn't hold off. I think it's something you could, go get as many interviews as you can early on and build that experience. And guess what? You might land a job with someone that says, well, we'll put you on a training course.
Yeah, good advice. And that kind of answers the next question we've had from another graduate who's done a master's in marketing from Nottingham Trent.
All these people are so intelligent on the call. What's going on?
Well, yes, they are. And some employers are going to miss out on some very bright individuals here. This graduate here, he again studied a relevant degree, but doesn't have relevant experience. So again, same answer to our previous questioner is, keep applying, try and get those jobs that you want. And you may have to zigzag before you get the job that you want. But it's very easy to get into a rut with just any old job, and you panic and take the first thing. So it's very important to, there are jobs out there in the creative industry, and it's worth sticking to your guns as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to draw this to a close now. Thank you everyone for attending today. Some great questions there at the end. Do go on the platform and have one-to-one mentoring sessions with any of our mentors, but Neil is on there. He's got some wonderful advice, and if you have something specific that you'd like to speak to him about, then I'm sure he will be happy to help. So Neil, once again, thank you very much for your presentation on how to get a dream job in the creative industry. And we'll be back here next month with another workshop. So please keep an eye out on your emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for listening, everyone.